A Crow scout bolts through the Bighorn Mountains, late summer, chapter 1819. Pine needles crunching underfoot, his breath ragged. 32 Cheyenne Dog Soldiers wore paint stark on their faces, thunder after him on horseback, arrows whistle, slamming into his back. He drops dead in seconds. These aren't ordinary warriors. They're the elite of the Cheyenne Nation, 10,000, strong, sworn to die before retreating. But the scout's death is no accident. It's bait drawing them into a trap where 150 Crow warriors lurk ready to strike. This isn't the Hollywood West with noble heroes. It's a brutal kill-or-be-killed world where 80% of plains battles ended in scalping or mutilation unrecorded except in tribal songs. Euro-American tales of peaceful savages. Pure myth masking a reality where every buffalo herd was a reason to fight. So how do these dog soldiers face a deadly ambush, and what makes one warrior, One-Eyed Antelope, a name the Crow still sing about? That scout's death wasn't just a random clash. It was a spark in a fire that had been burning for centuries across the Great Plains. Long before any Europeans set foot in North America, tribes like the Cheyenne and Crow were locked in fierce battles over the lifeblood of their world buffalo herds. These massive animals, numbering up to 30 million in the 1800s, provided food, clothing, and tools. Controlling the best hunting grounds like those along the Powder River meant survival for your people. Lose them, and your tribe faced starvation. This wasn't about glory. It was about making sure your kids didn't go hungry. Then the game changed. In the 1600s, Spanish settlers brought horses to the Southwest. By the 1700s, tribes like the Cheyenne and Crow had mastered them, turning warriors into lightning-fast raiders who could hit a rival camp 50 miles away and vanish before dawn. Add firearms to the mix. French and British traders flooding the plains with muskets like the Northwest trade gun by the 1750s. And suddenly, a single warrior could kill from 100 yards, not just 10. Raids got deadlier, ambushes bloodier. A typical skirmish in 1819 might see 20 warriors dead in minutes, compared to a handful in the days of bows and spears. Technology didn't start the wars, but it sure poured fuel on them. The Cheyenne and Crow were bitter rivals in this high-stakes world. The Cheyenne, about 10,000 strong by 1819, had migrated from Minnesota to the Great Plains, claiming lands from the Black Hills to Colorado. The Crow, smaller at 2,000 to 3,000, held tight to the Bighorn and Powder River regions, their home for generations. These weren't just neighbors squabbling over borders. Their feud was a blood debt fueled by decades of raids, stolen horses, and dead kin. A Crow warrior might grow up hearing stories of a Cheyenne raid that killed his uncle, just as a Cheyenne boy learned to hate the Crow who burned his village. By 1819, peace wasn't an option. Every encounter was a chance to settle the score. This story unfolds in the Bighorn Mountains of northern Wyoming, late summer 1819. Think rugged hills, thick with pine, rocky ridges jutting out like bones from the earth. It's a place where a war party could hide behind every boulder, where a single misstep could mean an arrow in your chest. This wasn't a battlefield with neat lines and flags. It was a maze of danger perfect for the kind of trap the Crow had set for those Cheyenne Dog Soldiers. Those Cheyenne warriors chasing that Crow scout weren't your average fighters. They were dog soldiers, the most feared and respected of the Cheyenne 6 warrior societies. Known as Hotometaneo in their language meaning dogmen, these guys were the tribe's elite, the ones called when the stakes were life or death. By 1819, the Dog Soldiers numbered maybe 200 out of the Cheyenne's 10,000, but their reputation made them seem like 1,000. Their oath, never retreat no matter the odds. If a dog soldier staked his lance into the ground, he was saying, "I'm fighting here until I win or die." That wasn't just bravado, it was a sacred vow to the tribe, one they'd rather die than break. Their weapon of choice was a beast of a lance, 8 to 12 feet long, tipped with a sharp iron point traded from French merchants or forged from stolen metal. Some had a shepherd's crook at the end, a wicked hook that could yank a Crow warrior off his horse or gut a charging buffalo. But the lance wasn't just for killing. In battle, a dog soldier would drive it into the dirt loop, a long sash from his war bonnet through it, and anchor himself to the spot. This wasn't symbolic decoration. It was a physical promise I'm not running. The script mentions this tactic, and it's no myth. Historical accounts from Cheyenne elders confirm. Dog soldiers used these sashes in desperate stands like the one we're about to see. That kind of commitment made them the Cheyenne's shock troops, the first in and the last out of any fight. Becoming a dog soldier wasn't easy. You didn't just sign up. A warrior had to prove himself in battle, maybe by stealing horses from a Crow camp or taking a scalp in a raid. Then came the rituals, days of fasting, sweat lodge ceremonies, and offerings to the spirits, all to show your heart was pure and your loyalty unbreakable. By 1819, the Cheyenne valued these men so much that dog soldiers often led war parties or guarded the tribe during migrations. They were young, most in their 20s, but their training was brutal. Mock battles, endurance runs, and learning to wield that massive lance on horseback at full gallop. Think of them as the Navy SEALs of the plains. Except failure meant not just death, but dishonor to your entire tribe. This group of 32 dog soldiers riding through the Bighorn Mountains was a hand-picked crew, likely chosen for their skill and nerve after visiting their Arapaho allies. They weren't looking for a fight that day, but when they spotted that Crow scout, their blood was up. The Cheyenne-Crow feud ran deep, and a lone enemy was too tempting to ignore. Little did they know that choice was about to drag them into a nightmare. So let's set the scene. It's late summer, 1819, and those 32 Cheyenne dog soldiers are winding their way north through the Bighorn Mountains, their ponies kicking up dust on a narrow trail. They're tired, but alert, fresh off a visit with their Arapaho allies, a bond that's held strong since the 1700s when both tribes teamed up to dominate the plains trade routes. These guys are maybe 200 miles from home, deep in Crow territory, and every rustle in the pines puts them on edge. Their war paint, red and black streaks across their faces, glints in the sunlight, and their lances tied to their saddles clink softly with each step. They're not out for war today, just trying to get back to their villages in the Black Hills. But in 1819, crossing enemy land is like walking through a lion's den with a stake tied to your back. Then, as they crest a pine-covered ridge, one of the dog soldiers spots movement. A lone Crow scout, maybe 18 or 19 years old, freezes for a split second before bolting down the slope. He's fast dodging between trees, his moccasins barely touching the ground. The Cheyenne know he's trouble. Crow villages, usually 200 to 300 people, strong dot these mountains, and scouts like him are the eyes and ears of their war parties. This kid was likely sent from a camp just a few miles away, tasked with tracking any Cheyenne moving through their hunting grounds. The Crow, outnumbered 3-1 by the Cheyenne across the plains, rely on cunning to survive. They've been watching these dog soldiers for days, waiting for the right moment to strike. The dog soldiers don't hesitate. Their leader, maybe a veteran with scars from a dozen raids, signals the chase. Hooves pound the earth as the Cheyenne spur their ponies. Bows already drawn, arrows notched. The scout weaves through the trees, but he's no match for their speed. Within minutes, a volley of arrows catches him. 3 or 4 shafts bury into his back, and he collapses, blood soaking the pine needles. The dog soldiers circle his body, checking for signs of life, their war cries echoing off the ridges. It's a quick victory, but it feels too easy. A few of the younger warriors glance at the hills, sensing something's off, but the thrill of the kill clouds their judgment. What they don't know is that the scout was a pawn in a deadly game. The Crow didn't send him to fight. He was bait meant to lure the Cheyenne deeper into their trap. Historical accounts of plains warfare show this was a classic tactic: sacrifice one man to draw a stronger enemy into an ambush. The Crow, maybe 150 warriors strong, are already positioned in the surrounding mountains, hidden behind boulders and thickets, their own bows and muskets ready. The dog soldiers, for all their skill and bravery, just took the bait. That dead scout has done his job, and now the Cheyenne are exactly where the Crow want them. The moment those war cries fade, the trap snaps shut. From the surrounding hills, a wave of Crow warriors, maybe 100 to 150 strong, drawn from 3 nearby camps, pours out their shouts, splitting the air. The Cheyenne barely have time to react before arrows and musket balls rain down. The Crow, armed with bows and early firearms like the Northwest trade gun, a flintlock musket traded by British merchants since the 1750s, aim for the Cheyenne's ponies first. In plains warfare, killing an enemy's horses is step 1. It strands them, cuts off escape, and breaks their spirit. Within minutes, half the Cheyenne's 32 ponies are down screaming as arrows pierce their flanks or musket balls shatter their bones. Some dog soldiers, seeing the chaos, make a grim choice. They slit their own horses' throats with bone-handled knives, ensuring the Crow can't claim them as trophies. By 1819, a good war pony was worth more than a rifle. Losing one to the enemy was unthinkable. The Cheyenne, now outnumbered and on foot, scramble for cover. Their leader, probably that same scarred veteran, points to a nearby hilltop, its steep slopes and rocky crest offering a shred of hope. The dog soldiers sprint up the incline, their lances and bows clutched tight, dodging arrows that buzz past like angry hornets. They reach the summit maybe 50 feet above the valley and dig in. It's a solid position, high ground, gives them a clear shot at anyone climbing up, but it's a trap within a trap. The Crow have already fanned out, forming a loose ring around the hill, their warriors crouched behind pines and boulders across the surrounding ridges. Historical records of Crow tactics show they excelled at encirclement, using their smaller numbers to outmaneuver bigger foes. The Cheyenne, maybe 25, still standing after the initial volley, realize escape is off the table. This is where they'll fight and likely die. The battle turns into a brutal siege. The Crow keep their distance, peppering the hill with arrows and musket fire, aiming to wear the Cheyenne down. The dog soldiers, true to their oath, don't flinch. They return fire with their own bows, their arrows arching down the slope, some finding Crow warriors who stray too close. A few Cheyenne, armed with trade muskets or rifles, take careful shots. Each lead ball a precious resource, but the numbers are grim. One by one, dog soldiers fall arrows through the chest, musket balls to the head. By mid-afternoon, only about 12. Cheyenne are left their war paint smeared with sweat and blood. They abandon the open summit and retreat to a rocky outcropping just below a cluster of boulders that offers better cover. Here, wedged between stones, they make their stand, lances propped against rocks, bows drawn, and a few muskets still loaded. This isn't a fight for victory anymore, it's about defiance, the dog. Soldiers know they're surrounded, outgunned, and running low on arrows. The Crow, sensing the end, tighten their circle, their shouts growing bolder. Plains battles like this often lasted hours, with warriors trading volleys until one side broke or died. The Cheyenne, down to a dozen, are still deadly, their training and oath keeping them steady. But the Crow's trap is airtight, and every shot from the hills chips away at their numbers. The stage is set for a final desperate act, one that will carve a warrior's name into history. In that rocky outcropping, with arrows whistling past and musket smoke stinging their eyes, the Cheyenne's situation looks hopeless. The Crow, maybe 100, strong now after taking losses, are getting cocky. One of their warriors, a sharpshooter with a bow, decides to make a move. He's young, maybe in his early 20s, and bold, darting from boulder to boulder up the hill's steep slope. His arrows are deadly accurate, one catching a dog soldier in the arm, another grazing a warrior's scalp. The Cheyenne, down to 12 men, can't spare a single loss. This Crow is closing in maybe 30 yards away, and if he reaches the outcropping, he could pick them off one by one. The dog. Soldiers need a miracle, and they're about to get one in the form of a warrior named One-Eyed Antelope. One-Eyed Antelope, probably in his late 20s, is a battle-hardened dog soldier, his single eye sharp as a hawk's. The other was lost in a raid years ago, but it only made him tougher, more focused. He's crouched behind a boulder, clutching a flintlock rifle, a Kentucky long rifle likely traded from French merchants for buffalo hides. These rifles, accurate up to 150 yards, are rare on the plains in 1819, and ammo is scarcer still. One-Eyed Antelope has maybe 3 lead balls left, each one a make-or-break shot. He watches the crow sharpshooter tracking his movements as he ducks behind a rock, then pops up to loose another arrow. The Cheyenne hold their breath. One-Eyed Antelope steadies his rifle, the barrel resting on the boulder's edge, and waits. The crow's head bobs up again just for a second. That's all he needs. A crack splits the air, and the crow's head jerks back, a clean shot through the skull. He slumps forward, sprawled over the rock, blood pooling beneath him. The Cheyenne roar, their spirits lifted for the first time in hours. One-Eyed Antelope doesn't stop to celebrate. He reloads, ramming a fresh ball down the barrel, his hand steady despite the chaos. Then he starts to sing a Cheyenne death song, a haunting chant that echoes across the hill. It's not a cry of defeat, but a defiance of death, a vow to take as many crow with him as he can. The song, passed down through generations, speaks of courage, of meeting the spirits with honor. It fires up the surviving dog soldiers who grip their bows tighter, their eyes blazing. One-Eyed Antelope takes aim again, spotting another crow, this one creeping along a ridge 50 yards away. Another crack, another dead crow, this time a shot through the chest. The dog soldiers cheer, their voices carrying over the gunfire. He reloads once more, still singing, his voice steady and strong. A third. Crow maybe? A leader urging his men forward, steps into view, waving a war club. One-Eyed Antelope lines up the shot, exhales, and fires. The bullet catches the crow in the throat, dropping him instantly. A fourth crow, caught off guard by the rapid kills, hesitates too long. One more shot, one more body hits the dirt. 4 kills in minutes, each one a masterclass in precision. The crow hesitate, their advance stalling, as One-Eyed Antelope's song and deadly aim shake their confidence. For a moment it feels like the Cheyenne might hold the hill. But the crow aren't done. They regroup, their numbers still overwhelming. A volley of arrows arcs from the ridges, a dozen shafts at once. One-Eyed Antelope, exposed as he aims for another shot, takes 2 arrows, one in the shoulder, another in the chest. He staggers but doesn't fall, his song faltering, but his grip on the rifle firm. A third arrow finds his side and he drops to one knee, blood soaking his buckskin shirt. The other dog soldiers shout his name, urging him to take cover, but he shakes his head. He's a dog soldier, sworn to fight until the end. With his last strength, he raises his rifle, fires a final wild shot, and collapses, his body wedged against the boulder. One-Eyed Antelope is gone, but his stand, 4 dead crow, and a song that burned itself into their memory lives on. One-Eyed Antelope's fall is like a gut punch to the remaining dog soldiers. The rocky outcropping, now stained with blood, holds maybe 10 or 11. Cheyenne, their bows empty, their muskets out of lead. The crow, still 80 to 100, strong since the end, and press closer, their arrows and musket balls chipping at the boulders. The dog soldiers look at each other, their faces grim but resolute. They've got no arrows left, no bullets, just the weapons they were born to wield. 8-foot lances, bone-handled knives, tomahawks with iron blades, and war clubs carved from oak and studded with stone. This is it, the moment their oath was made for. They start to sing their death songs, rising in a defiant chorus, the same haunting chants One-Eyed Antelope sang minutes ago. It's a vow to the spirits, to their tribe, to take as many crow with them as they can. With a final shout, the Cheyenne burst from the outcropping, charging down the hill like a storm. They're not running to escape, they're running to fight. Lances lowered, knives flashing, they tear into the nearest crow warriors who are caught off guard by the sudden fury. One dog soldier drives his lance through a crow's chest, pinning him to the ground. Another swings his tomahawk, cracking a crow's skull, before an arrow takes him down. A third hurls his war club, smashing a crow's shoulder, only to be felled by a musket ball. The clash is chaos, a whirlwind of blood and screams lasting maybe 2 minutes. The crow, outnumbering them 10 to 1, recover quickly. Arrows fly thick, spears stab, and clubs swing. One by one, the dog soldiers fall, their bodies piling on the slope, each man fighting until his last breath. By the time the dust settles, all 32 Cheyenne are dead, their death songs silenced. The crow don't linger to mourn their own losses. maybe 20 or 30 warriors, including those One-Eyed Antelope killed. Plains warfare has its own brutal code, and they follow it. They move among the Cheyenne bodies, scalping each one the bloody trophies tied to their belts as marks of victory. Knives flash as they mutilate the corpses, cutting limbs or torsos to dishonor their enemies. In death, a practice so common that 80% of Plains battlefields bore these grim scars. Anything valuable, lances, knives, war bonnets, even beaded moccasins, is stripped away, loot worth months of trade with French merchants. The bodies are left for wolves and vultures, a final insult in a war where mercy was a foreign word. But the Crow know they're on borrowed time. Before chasing that scout, the Cheyenne sent a few young warriors back to their village's runners who could cover 50 miles a day on foot. Those messengers are already halfway to the Black Hills carrying word of the Crows' attack. The Cheyenne, with their 10,000-strong nation, could muster a war party of 500 in days. The Crow, outnumbered and deep in their own territory, grab their loot and vanish into the mountains, their camps packed up by dawn. They're right to hurry. Within a week, Cheyenne raiders hit Crow villages along the Powder River, burning teepees and killing dozens. This wasn't justice. It was vengeance, the kind that fueled the Plains for centuries. Historical accounts estimate that feuds like this cost thousands of lives between 1800 and 1850, a cycle of blood that only slowed when U.S. forts rolled in decades later. The blood-soaked hill in the Bighorn Mountains didn't mark the end of this story. It was just the beginning of its echo. Decades later, by the 1870s, the Cheyenne and Crow, once bitter enemies, found themselves fighting a bigger threat, U.S. expansion. The 1868 Fort Laramie Treaty, signed by both tribes, promised peace and land rights. But American settlers and soldiers kept pushing in, shrinking the buffalo herds and sparking wars. Faced with this common enemy, old feuds started to fade. By the 1880s, Cheyenne and Crow warriors were trading stories around campfires, not arrows. They formed uneasy alliances, sometimes even scouting together for the U.S. Army against other tribes like the Sioux. It was a strange twist, two nations that spilled so much blood, now sharing a pipe, united by a shared fight to survive. But the memory of that 1819 battle never faded. Crow warriors, years later, still talked about One-Eyed Antelope, the Cheyenne who killed 4 of their men with a rifle and a song. Around their teepees, they'd recount his death song, a chant so powerful it stuck with the survivors, passed down like a sacred story. They described how he stood tall, his single eye glinting, dropping their brothers one by one before arrows took him. This wasn't just respect for a foe, it was awe. Plains tribes valued bravery above all, and One-Eyed Antelope's stand was the kind of tale that earned a place in their oral traditions. When Cheyenne and Crow began meeting in peace, the Crow shared these stories, and One-Eyed Antelope's family finally learned his fate. His kin, maybe his wife or children, heard the Crow sing his death song, piecing together how he died, not in shame, but as a dog soldier true to his oath. That moment, decades after the battle, was a bridge between enemies, proof that courage could outlast hatred. The place where it all happened got a name: Standing Crow Creek. Some say it honors the Cheyenne's defiant stand holding the hill against impossible odds. Others think it recalls their taunts, shouting victory cries after kills, like One-Eyed Antelope's. The creek, just a few miles from the Powder River, sits in a region scarred by later battles. In 1866, the Fetterman fight saw 81 U.S. soldiers wiped out by Lakota, Cheyenne, and Arapaho warriors barely 20 miles away. A year later, the Wagon Box fight pitted 31 soldiers against 1,000 Lakota and Cheyenne right in the same valley. Standing Crow Creek was just one chapter in a land soaked in blood where every hill seemed to hold a story of war. The name, like One-Eyed Antelope's song, was a marker, a way to remember a fight most of the world would never know. Standing Crow Creek is more than a name on a map. It's a window into a world most history books skip. The Great Plains in 1819 wasn't a place for the faint of heart. Life was a daily grind, and survival meant fighting tooth and nail for what kept your tribe alive. buffalo herds. Horses hunting grounds. A single buffalo, maybe, when 500 pounds, could feed a family for weeks, provide hides for a teepee and bones for tools. A war pony could mean the difference between a successful raid and a dead warrior. These weren't luxuries, they were necessities, and tribes like the Cheyenne and Crow killed or died to secure them. The battle we just saw, with its 32 Cheyenne and maybe 30 Crow dead, was one of thousands that stained the plains red. Historians estimate that intertribal warfare claimed 10,000 lives between 1800 and 1850, not counting the women and children who starved when their hunters didn't come home. This wasn't senseless violence. It was a brutal math of survival in a land where winter could kill as surely as an arrow. But here's the thing. We only know this story because of tribal storytelling. The Cheyenne and Crow didn't have printing presses or newspapers. Their histories lived in songs like One-Eyed Antelope's Death Chant or in tales told around winter fires. Unlike Euro-American settlers who scribbled every skirmish in journals or army reports. Native American battles like this one, maybe 90% of them went unrecorded in writing. What we have comes from oral traditions passed down by elders like Cheyenne, historian John Stands in Timber, who shared stories of dog soldiers with scholars in the 1900s. These accounts aren't just campfire tales. They're as vital as any archive carrying details of courage, strategy, and loss. Without them, Standing Crow Creek would be just another forgotten hill, its 32 dead warriors lost to time. The fact that we're telling this story now, over 200 years later, shows the power of those voices keeping history alive when paper failed. And yet, back in the early 1800s, most Americans on the East Coast didn't see it that way. To them, Native Americans were noble savages, a term cooked up by philosophers like Jean-Jacques Rousseau. The idea was that tribes lived in some pure, peaceful state, uncorrupted by civilization. It's a nice story, but it's dead wrong. The Cheyenne and Crow weren't saints or monsters. They were people driven by the same instincts as anyone else. Protect your family, secure your future, honor your kin. Their wars with scalping and mutilation look brutal to us, but so did European battles with bayonets and cannon fire. In 1819, while the Cheyenne and Crow fought over buffalo, Americans were pushing west, slaughtering tribes and each other in wars like the Seminole War, where 1,500 died. The noble savage myth let settlers paint Native Americans as either idyllic or barbaric, ignoring their complex societies, with warrior codes, trade networks, and alliances as intricate as any in Europe. The truth. People are people, and the plains were a crucible where survival shaped everyone's choices for better or worse.